Good afternoon from here in Singapore, but good morning or good evening or good day, depending on where else in the world you are. Thank you for joining me today. My name's Christian Barker, and this is the latest edition in a little something I'm calling Banter with Barker, an ongoing series of interviews during the quarantine lockdown. And today I've got the pleasure of speaking with a gentleman, a good friend of mine, and one of the leading hoteliers of the world, Anthony Lark, the man behind Trisara Resort in Phuket, and who was also the very first GM of Amanpuri, the first of the Aman resorts. There he is. Hello, Anthony. Good to speak with you.
Hello, mate. Good to hear from you, and great to see you again, Christian.
Yeah,
I miss you. You've been in lockdown.
Indeed, it's been impossible to get out of Singapore, and we're the largest country in the world, so very little in the way of satisfying the wanderlust over the last 70 or 80 days. But we're gradually freeing things up, and yeah, hopefully we're going to be allowed to go to various safe places, such as Thailand is being mentioned as one of those. So you never know. You may see me again in the near future. All
right. Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, and I want to apologize. I didn't wear a suit or a flower in my pocket today. I would have dressed up for you.
It's not a flower. It is just a pocket square. But I thought I'd go with something a little bit tropical to get a sense of.
Oh, thank you.
Sense of place. Though I believe that's the slogan of a different group of hotels.
It is.
Anyway, Anthony and I have known one another for a very, very long time, and I have been frequenting Trisara Resort on Phuket for I don't even know how many years, but I think it's 6 or 7, something I'm up to. And I can tell you with all honesty, I've never been anywhere else on Phuket in all of my visits there. You kind of had me from hello. And
it must have been the quality of the Negronis or something.
It could have been. Got a few other delicious cocktails on your menu as well. Fantastic food, fantastic accommodations,
Thank you.
Beautiful surrounds, and impeccable service. You know, I've told you all of these things before. But it brings me back to the fact that, you know, I've been having a number of these conversations during this period and talking about how people in various industries and businesses are navigating the current crisis and going through it, and you know, what we prophesy the future may be. And it struck me that you know, Trisara seems incredibly well placed, given that, you know, in my experience, you can really, you know, you get off the plane, 20 minutes later you're checking in. You can spend the whole time at your villa and never encounter, you know, another human being apart from your lovely staff, if you wish. Do you think this is possibly where space is going to be headed in future, when people are a little bit more conscious of wanting to just, I don't know, maintain that privacy, stay away from?
Yeah. I think you and I both agree that all hotels, and certainly hotels in the upper scale market, all of us need to evolve and innovate to, you know, meet the challenges of what the world will be like in 2021 and 2022. Yes. What will that be? You know, was that your question? I guess so. You know, in the world of 5-star resorts and hotels that we operate, I think small is desirable, and I think, you know, small is good, as they say. And I think personal attention to guest services and this formula for, you know, less is more, and more private space, and, you know, private air conditioning systems, and less crowds, less check-in, all of that whole formality, where you're dealing with more mass tourism. Once you remove all of that, little places like ours that are more residential than they are commercial become very attractive. Yeah.
Okay. No, it was a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with James McBride from Nihi.
Right.
You know, he was kind of saying that that he felt that their formula was ideally suited to where the world's going in the up sector, and I think absolutely the same goes for you guys.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. Our owners at Trisara certainly hope you're right. I think people considering a stay in a 5-star hotel will most certainly look for qualities in that hotel that match the things that we've just been talking about. I think that if you look at small and personal and that whole formula, ironically, this philosophy is the same philosophy that drove companies like, particularly Aman Resorts, back in the late 80s. That whole business model was small, personal. No one was afraid of a virus in those days, but it ticked all the boxes that you're now suggesting are important. Christian, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could gaze into the future. I don't, but but I think that from the earliest days, you now see in Aman Resorts, you now see Four Seasons, Six Senses, hundreds of other independent small hotels like Trisara, all adopting that same philosophy that luxury is defined by things other than gold taps and automated toilets and Carrera marble. I think it's got to do more with personal things. And so I think, luxury at the top end is desirable when it comes to small resorts like ours in the future. Certainly. Yeah.
We all recognise that Aman has been hugely influential and has really changed the hospitality landscape. Back when, I don't know, how old were you when you became the GM of Amanpuri?
What are you insinuating? There's far less up here than there was when I first met you. I was 26 when I came to Phuket to open the first Aman Resort. I was Adrian's first general manager to open the first Aman Resort. And I'd like to just take a moment. That was 1988. And I'd never been to Thailand before. I'd like to take a moment just briefly, because those of us listening or tuning in from the hotel world will understand that, or may know that we lost one of the great men of our business this week, the legendary designer and architect, Ed Tuttle, who was instrumental in the first few Aman resorts and went on to create all sorts of masterpieces, including Aman Kila and Aman Jiwo in Central Java, as well as villas all over the world and the Park Hyatt, I think in Paris. We lost Ed this week. And so it's with a heavy heart that we all, those of us who knew Ed Tuttle and actually had the honor to run the hotels and unfold guest services and things in these amazing places that Ed created for us to work in. It was an incredible honor to have both known him personally, and I won't go on, but his genius is legendary. Every designer in the world knows of Ed Tuttle, and his the way his hotels unfolded visually, the way that they worked in terms of transition of guests, and the way services unfolded. It took together with Adrian Zecker, it was like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Or Bernie Taupin and Elton John, they just had that thing I can't even explain.
No, it's amazing and a great loss. Yep. I don't want to say the joke, but it's obvious. That makes you Ringo.
Ringo. Well, I am a drummer. I'm a frustrated drummer.
That's awesome. So setting that big question I wanted to ask you is, back in those early days, 88, decades back, did you imagine that what you were doing, which I believe seemed like a crazy idea at the time, and struggled to get financing? But because it just seemed like such an out there idea to make this boutique. Economies.
Well, I mean, Adrian Zecker was a visionary, and I think a lot of visionaries are misunderstood. When he found that piece of land on the west coast of Phuket in 1985 or 86 and started buying it with the hope of building his home, he never even imagined a company called Aman Resorts. He just wanted a place to build a house in the winter. He had a beautiful house in Bali, which is beautiful in the summer, and he wanted a house in Phuket, which is great between November and April. He'd sold his stake in Regent Hotels and wanted a house. But the land was too big, so he ended up buying 3 or 4 plots, and it turned into 10 plots, and the only way in was through the hotel next door. And so he said, let's build, 40 rooms, and I'll build my house next door to it. And so led that sort of mixed-use development. But no, none of us knew in 1988. We knew it was beautiful, and everyone who arrived thought it was really unique and special. And we had a certain culture with our staff that was very relaxed and very un-hotel. I think we were the first to do many things. Adrian, I guess, hired me because I didn't come from the Hilton, or I didn't have or bring with me any big hotel mentality towards policies and things. So basically, I was an open book, and he could basically brainwash me the way that he wanted to, and did. And we, for instance, decided not to charge guests, or not to ask guests to sign for food and beverage after they ate or dined or were in the bar. And to the average bean counter, that was suicide. To not have guests sign for their meals. The implication is that guests would always refuse to pay for that on departure, and we'll lose a fortune. But of course, now lots of hotels do that, and we did the same at Trisara when we opened, and things like that where it was more residential and more personal. In Amanpuri, the girls did in the lobby who met you and took you to your room, they didn't wear shoes, as they would. And following a philosophy that we had, that if we could create a small hotel that was more personal, where the manager was really like the host rather than a bean counter, I've used that word twice now, and where the services unfolded and food was honest. There was no nouvelle cuisine or Michelin stars available in 1988. A great bowl of noodles and simple, honest food that one would eat at a resort hotel was the fare, and our guests were treated as we would have treated them had they been checking in or staying in our home. And that was the whole philosophy. And I know it's a cliche, but that's actually the way we did it. And it was a lot of fun. It was an un-hotel.
Well, and a completely different approach, because you were mentioning gold taps, that whole very sort of Donald Trump approach to the 80s was all about. It was miles of gold and
great
blitz and livery doorman, all this. And you guys changed the whole landscape. Amazing.
Yeah, I think, and by default, and actually without the purpose of doing it, we just followed, Adrian's nose was very good. I mean, until the late 1980s, the great resorts of the world were places like the big hotels in Hawaii, the most famous hotels, Mauna Kea and the Villa d'Este on Lago di Como has, 300 rooms. The Hotel de Cap Eden Rock is not a small hotel. This was the epitome of luxury. They weren't small. And they were very formal, even in the Caribbean, places like Sandy Lane, that you needed a jacket to get into the restaurant in the Caribbean. That was out. Adrian told me that the upper classes are dressing down and the lower classes are dressing up. Not that that's got anything to do with you, Christian.
I'll take that. I'll take that as a compliment.
But it's actually true. It's actually true.
Yeah.
Richard Branson didn't want to walk around our lobby wearing, formal clothes. I mean, it was all about dressing down and feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
Unpretentious. Everything had to be unpretentious and simple and honest.
And 30 years later, it does seem like, as I was saying at the start, that particularly things were swinging that way anyway. It's long. If you look at a group of businessmen, and there's 5 guys in suits and 1 guy in a t-shirt and chinos, guy in the t-shirt's probably the boss or the owner.
You got it.
So it's been going that way anyway.
Exactly.
So do you think that we're gonna just see things further evolve in this direction?
Yeah, I think that luxury. I mean, I truly believe that this word luxury is obviously, like many other things these days, it's been overkill to the point where it's losing its value. I looked it up a little earlier, but it actually means in Wikipedia, I think, the state of great comfort and extravagant living, right? A state of great comfort and extravagant living. But to use the words of my friend Morris Sim, who's one of the great marketing minds, who sits on the board of Trisara, he says, and he's absolutely right, I live by this, he said that luxury is the outcome of an experience and not a product.
Yeah.
And therefore, in our business, luxury can mean a great night's sleep. It can mean the way that, laundry is folded when it comes back to your room. The feel of a bathrobe on you can be luxurious, right? An incredible bar of soap, the way a croissant is presented, or even, really special attentive service from a staff member. That's luxurious. Yeah. It isn't gold taps. It's not Carrera marble, as I said before, and it's certainly not Japanese toilets that, blow smoke, air. But, if you just, Christian, if you look into the future, I think when people are free to travel again, and we have a vaccine in place, not just hotels at the top end, but all hotels are going to have to innovate and manage their way through this, new world. None of us have navigated this before. This is new to all of us. There are obviously things like buffets, spatial planning and design. There'll be less buffets, there'll be less crowds at check-ins, there'll be less tour buses and smaller, vehicles to get around in. There'll be less queues at check-in. Hygiene will obviously be better in hotels than it was in the past, and they'll make more of a point of telling you about that. And obviously better, as I said, better room service. People will probably want to dine either in the room, on the balcony, or in, different locations around the resort rather than in crowded restaurants. I think they're obvious things. I think there's more to it when it comes to the upscale hotels, the expensive resorts in the future. I wish I did have a crystal ball. You'd be very valuable if you could tell every hotel owner what the future looked like. I have to say that I think 5-star and upper scale hotels tend to move faster towards these trends. We've got to learn to manage guest expectations a bit better. In many ways, it's easier when you're smaller to unfold these things than you are when you've got 300 rooms and 500 staff. We have to learn to anticipate guests and to surprise and delight people. A surprise is a luxurious experience, right? When a staff member gives you something that you did not expect, that's something that you're going to write or tell your friends about or write about on TripAdvisor. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's important.
Well, I think you're certainly much better positioned than the mid and low scale because at the upper end you've already got more room between tables. Already got private villas as you have. Hello, Maria. You've got less evolution to kind of have to get through. I think it's going to be a real big struggle for the kind of holiday ends of the world to get along.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. I think I mean, would you rather own a 40-room hotel today than a 400-room hotel? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a given. I think that, like I said, buffets. I think there's many things. If you had a crystal ball and you looked ahead into the future, we've done a lot of thinking and roundtables and brainstorming about this in the last few months, like everybody has, right? But if you look to 2022, when I think it will really return to 2019 numbers, that's where all the money is at the moment. And I think it will change a lot. I think hotels will have to offer more transformational experiences. I think resorts need to be more local. I think we have to engage local communities a lot better. I think that kind of luxurious experience is already what people, I must say, like Trisara and places like Six Senses, Nihi Watu, and Bill Bensley's Shintamani collection around Southeast Asia and Cambodia, etc., are great examples of that. Really engaging, not just for PR, but actually really engaging local, hiring local, buying local, creating farms. That's luxurious.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have to be less cookie cutter. I think hotels have to adopt a less commercial strategy towards the way they deal with, you know, deposits and reservations and flexibility with the way we allow people to stay if they've got a late flight. You know, in the old days, it was like, okay, you've got to pay a half-day rate if you stay in the room at 1 minute past, 11. And breakfasts were like shut down at 10:30 a.m. Well, you know, what is more luxurious than a long breakfast and conversation with your partner in a resort overlooking the sea? You know, that's true luxury. That's got nothing to do with the food. I think, you know, I think that in terms of policies, again, with a crystal ball, some of the services and products that may evolve are things like more personal engagement with guests before they arrive. I think if I can reach out to you and get to know who you are a little better and unfold some ideas through creative planning before you arrive and then surprise you, that's luxurious.
Perhaps, or rather than filling out a survey.
Exactly. Well, I mean, exactly. And, you know, paperless check-ins. And a lot of hotel companies are already doing this, but, you know, management a sincere sense of welcome on arrival by management, a sense of caring about you. I think we would become more aware of guests' personal likes and dislikes if that happened. I think that staff should be in, you know, frontline staff, front office, butlers, reception people, guest services people. I think in the future they will be empowered by owners and management to make more decisions as they would if they were welcoming you into their own home, rather than corporate sort of guidelines. I think that staff in the future will be encouraged and should be incentivized to think out of the box.
Yeah.
And to, you know, if you say, I didn't have that beer last night on checkout, take the damn beer off. You shouldn't have to run and ask the manager to ascertain whether Christian is a liar and did, in fact, drink that one beer. And in your case, of course, it's true.
Rarely drink beer. We just saw your friend of mine, Maria Schollenbacher, the eminent travel writer, join us. Thanks for watching.
Great lady.
But she and I were having a conversation a few weeks ago on a sort of a very similar topic, and discussing that, and I think Maria has seen just sort of travel from the United States to the UK and then down to Italy.
That's right. I remember that.
I think her comment was, pro tip, travel is going to suck in future. Well, air travel, at least, it did not seem terribly smooth, even with, you know, scant flyers.
No.
And I think, you know, probably has a crystal ball is bang on about that. But the conversation we had was, and, you know, we were discussing this and saying, perhaps if it's going to be harder for you to get to a location, and you're not going to think, oh, this weekend I'll go to Bali, this weekend I'll go to Phuket, or this weekend I'll go to, you know, Sicily, this weekend to Spain, whatever it may be. That travelers really will do less but better travel, will really, you know, focus on going somewhere amazing and spending 2 weeks there, really immersing in that location, and probably just staying in one location, not zipping
and getting to know your family again.
Yeah.
You know, instead, I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that you look at what's happening in our country back in Australia right now. They've told everybody in Australia, forget about going to Bali and Phuket until January, right? Until next year, basically. So let's get to understand this great continent that is Australia. And so you see a lot of families driving on, you know, what I did as a little kid with my family, my mum and dad. We would, you know, my sisters, we would take the car and go somewhere. That would be our holiday. You know, aeroplane, what? You couldn't afford it. But I think you're right. I think domestic travel will evolve as well, and you'll see a lot of a lot of expats in Thailand, for instance. I've already spoken to numerous friends who live on Phuket who are already driving to Koh Samui, who are already planning trips to Khao Sok National Park. You know, an hour north of Phuket Island, there is a rainforest that is in many areas older than the Amazon.
Nice.
And it's incredible, and no one ever goes there because of the lure of the beach, right? And so there's things outside of that familiar environment. I think, look at in Bali, it's exactly the same, and no doubt in Malaysia, etc. as well. So yeah, I think you're right. People will travel less, stay longer, maybe spend less. I think everyone is a bit more frugal than they were a year ago. People aren't going to be throwing money at very expensive resorts and that aren't doing things of value.
Yeah, I'm even hearing that people are spending less on those, status symbols, blatant displays of what I'm hearing from wine distributors, that they're selling less and less of the kind of $500, $1,000 bottles. Which a lot of which were being used as for swagger purposes to whip out this amazingly bottle on the
status symbols.
But it follows down into all those other displays of wealth. Cars, watches, clothing, accessories, etc.
Yeah, I mean, in 20 years ago, the epitome of luxury was to be taken from your private jet or your first class airline in the Caribbean to the resort in a Rolls Royce of all things, right? That was luxury. People now want to do it in an open Jeep. I've seen millionaires stay here with private jets who literally don't want to rent the 80-foot yacht. They're happy to rent the fishing boat with the local guy and go out and catch a few fish and have an experience on the water that isn't all about ostentatious crystal and all of the trappings of that. So yeah, I think less is more. As we said, the upper classes are dressing down, and people like us are dressing up.
It's in my contract.
But
I do it newsreader style
right.
on the stations. I've got to say this. I'm still barefoot here with shorts below. Trust me. So
we want to know what shorts you've got on.
It's not to be revealed.
Okay.
You'll have to
but I think everyone's, the things that were pet hates in hotels before, and the things that didn't make any sense to the average traveler, these are not going to be acceptable in the future. I think people are going to be more demanding. I think that, when you look at people are going to be asking for more creative private dining experiences in secret gardens in the corner of a beach. I think hotels have got to stop closing off the buffet or whatever it is at 10 o'clock for breakfast. Everyone's pet hate is the minibar. I see, minibars, it should be, if you can, in a small hotel or in a luxury hotel, personalize the minibar before I get there. Send me something that asks me what I'd like in my fridge, and I might say fresh coconuts, or I might say Patron tequila. Whatever it is, give it to me, and then I'll buy it. But don't give me the standard cookie cutter minibar in every room. It makes no sense anymore. I think sustainability is a key element of where we're going. Gone are the days when you would accept plastic water bottles or amenities that were just plastic thrown out. Things wrapped in plastic. Those days are gone, mate, and it's fantastic. The buying local and using local ingredients and finding things that grow locally.
Anthony, just to jump back to the plastic. There's been a lot of discussion that we were really making headway the last few years with big and disposable, single use, this, that, and the other. However, with the virus, people wanting to not touch or use things that have been touched, a lot of that single use stuff is coming back. How do we navigate around that?
No, I've heard that. I don't think there's a simple solution to that, mate. I've heard that people are buying plastic bags full of everything now. I can only tell you that it has been going the other way, and you know that from in hotel. I mean, our friend in Singapore, Angel, and Angelique, our friend with the radio show, she leads a sustainability day. In the Phuket Hotels Association, which I run here, has 75 hotel members, and we were the first organization of hotels anywhere in Southeast Asia to sign a pledge to remove within 1 year 100% of our plastic water bottles in 100% of our rooms. And in 1 year, just that one little decision saved nearly 6 million bottles from a landfill in Phuket Island. And it's continuing on many other fronts, from education to all sorts of things. So these things are taking a hold, is my point. So I think, even though you hear those bad things, I think there's also some positive news on the horizon. I think people will be more careful and more caring about sustainability in the environment. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so.
No question. I think it's the same. It's the same with we talked about it earlier. Luxury, and what does it mean? It's no plastic bottles is luxury. Reusable, beautiful, reusable glass bottles is a luxury, and
leaving it for our children and grandchildren. It's not even luxury. That's
correct.
I would say.
Well, but not only plastic. Plastic straws are easy. A paper straw costs 1 baht. A plastic straw costs 0.5 of a baht, but it doesn't affect the cost of your drink if you use a paper straw. There are easy things to do. I'm not saying we did anything unique. The challenge will come when it comes to environmental things like air conditioning systems, reducing electrical consumption, and our footprint on the environment. They're big questions that hotel designers, again, like Bill Bensley and others, are approaching now, which is great. Using more bamboo, using more local materials, not flying so many things in, buying locally. Yeah.
And of course, on that topic, which you and I have spoken about, your wonderful restaurant Peru, which is very focused on local produce. Virtually everything there, I believe, is
yes.
sourced from the local area.
It's a great. That's a classic story.
But it's the only. I wanted to point out that it is the only restaurant on Phuket with a Michelin star, which congratulations.
Thank you for the pitch. Yes, we had a small space behind our bar, and we have this extraordinarily talented young Dutch chef called Jimmy, who was cooking for us, who wanted another challenge. We happen to own land inland of Trisara, which is a beautiful farm with verdant soil, beautiful soil, and we started growing things, and then that just became bigger. And the PRU stands for Plant, Raise and Understand, and it's a farm now with like 15 people working in it. I think we're running 60 chickens, ducks. We don't eat the chickens, I might add. They're only for the eggs. But it's 100% local food. Yep. It's Western food grown and planted in Thailand. For the protein, we use one farmer who we know uses sustainable practices. We use one fisherman who Jimmy knows personally, who sends him WhatsApps at 3 a.m. to show him what fish he's caught, that sort of stuff. That's local, right? That's what I was talking about. And other hotel companies are doing that, but Jimmy just took it to another level, and it's extraordinary. And we received a Michelin star, so we're very, very proud of that.
No, it's exciting, and I think a rising tide raises all boats. So,
that's true. That's true. I think
getting the rest of the scene there to lift its game, and I know there's a lot of other restaurateurs and chefs on Phuket who are aspiring to not knock you off your perch, but
yeah, and it wouldn't be knocking us off our perch. I mean, it would be great. And in fact, there are lots of restaurants on Phuket that were given a Michelin plate, the next level of Michelin recognition. To get a star is one thing, but the recognition of the quality, Phuket has increased. It was always a place for beaches, but there are so many great little restaurants like Koh Samui and like Bali in the past. Phuket's developing this little boutique collection of great little restaurants around the island. Really, I think you've written about it, and also wellness. It's like Koh Samui was the wellness capital of Thailand, and Phuket now has great spas and great wellness resorts. I think that whole thing is spreading. If you're talking about, we talked about luxury before and what that meant in the future. I think that wellness, which is to me an overused and often misunderstood term, wellness will play a huge role in shaping the way that hotels are run in the future. And already hotels are adopting this. You know, all guests fundamentally want to feel better when they leave than when they arrived. You want to look better, you want a suntan, you know, you want to feel and look better to come home and, you know, have proof that you've just been on a holiday. I mean, some guests come and sit by the bar and, you know, drink tequila and smoke cigars all day, great. But most want to get fit. If we can get closer to guests by personalizing services and understanding what they want, and be more engaging on a personal level like a butler would in the past, then we can teach you new skills. We can, whether it's painting, whether it's cooking, whether it's, you might want to lose a few kilograms or just get fit, be more flexible, if you want to breathe better. If, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Hotels can now do that with bespoke wellness. It doesn't have to be a medical spa to work well in an existing resort. You don't have to brand yourself as a medical spa to provide really first-class wellness.
You have to prevent people from having that cigar or tequila by the pool on those days when they want to, because there are some properties that go a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Say, no.
No. We don't want to be the school teacher. If you want to smoke a cigar all day, by all means. I just don't do it in front of anyone else's table. But I think, you know, I think in terms of wellness, if it's one of the things that people are becoming aware of now, and that a lot of companies, again, like Six Senses, like Trisara, like Aman are doing, is to focus on the sleep experience. The sleep experience in a hotel is transformative in itself, because you're in bed for a third of the day. It's not just about proper blackout anymore. It's not just about removal of ambient noise from air conditioners or minibar refrigerators, or sensible lighting. You know, there are the way to manage and improve your quality of your sleep is often enhanced through the experts in the hotel teaching you about breathing, about music, scents, smelling certain oils and all of that. I'm not an expert on it, but it's creeping into the hotel business very fast. And if you get a good night's sleep, you feel a lot better the next day.
Yeah, although those
transformational.
You know, those little touches, there are properties that get those wrong. And that was one of the things that struck me, you know, the first time I came to Trisara many years ago, was that, yeah, there was a towel wherever I needed one. There was the air conditioning was absolutely silent and highly effective. That, as you say, didn't rain. That there weren't those little things that and a big one always mentioned to me is no nickel and diming. You know, as you say, that you don't want to have to break a seal on something and then help me.
Yeah, I mean, how many times is a great stay? You know, you've been at a place for a week, you've had a fantastic time, you're looking good, you're feeling great, you go to check out. The most painful part of the experience is paying the bill, right? You're at the front desk, the cashier looks at you and says, you know, Mr. Barker, did you have anything from your minibar last night? And you say, no, I didn't have a chocolate. And 5 minutes later, she says, you had a Toblerone.
Yeah.
I don't trust you, Christian. That whole week of great service is now down the drain. So I think that this leads to things like empowerment of staff to make decisions. You know, take the bloody Toblerone off. If you've spent $20,000 in a hotel, you shouldn't be asking people what they had in the minibar there last night. You know, if they drank the.
Speaking of staff, that's and it's a quote that you know really stayed with me, and that I've repeated to a lot of other people in not just hotels, but across the board in anything that involves service, is that you can train a good person to provide good service, but you can't. You know,
I think the saying that I quoted you on was, I think it may have come from Adrian Zecker, and it was that I can train a really nice person how to be a waiter, but I can't train a great waiter how to be a nice person. So engaging the right staff rather than the first staff, and looking into their faces and not necessarily their resumes or their CVs. When you're hiring frontline staff, you should hire for their interpersonal skills, not for their experience. At Trisara, 40% of the staff who met guests had never worked in a hotel before, but they had great personalities. And we trained them how to do the, we gave them the job skills by employing them a couple of months earlier, and it really paid off. You noticed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, look, last thing I want to cover with you, because I know you've got to jump onto some other more important call. Don't worry,
some big Zoom call somewhere, right?
Exactly. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, and look, we don't need to mention names like Kylie Minogue and Kate Moss and Roger Federer. We won't.
You wouldn't mention those names, would you?
Dropping name really uncouth. That's what my close friend Johnny Depp always tells me. So I don't like to. But how is it that you've had many of these bold faces you over the years and come back and stay with you, and some of them I know have stayed with you for sort of months at a time.
Yep.
What do you think is the secret to taking care of people like that who been everywhere, they've seen everything? What's the trick?
Well, of course, everyone's different. To use your term, a Kate Moss is very different to a Roger Federer. Okay. So I think that to cater to those people and to make them happy in any hotel, again, you've got to try to anticipate what their expectations are and stay one step ahead of them. It's the same as Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Mr. and Mrs. Jones who are checking in on a weekend package. Roger Federer is actually no different to any other guest. Let's find out what Roger wants, and let's just stay in front of him and give it to him. And I think that's why small hotels can do that better than big ones. But I think the secret is not making a fuss. We treat every guest the same. It doesn't matter whether you're royalty or you've saved up all year to come and stay one night in a pool villa. You get exactly the same service. The management meet every guest on arrival. This is a big thing with Aman. If there's some Aman managers here, they'll understand what I'm talking about. It's treating guests as you would if they were friends staying in your home. And, that means having a drink with them. That means being down there in the morning. If you're the friend in my house, I would make sure that you slept well. I would make sure that I would send my car to the airport to get you. I'd make sure that I knew what food you wanted, and I'd share with you some of my experiences outside of the hotel that I thought were worthy of your, a trip outside, like a boat trip to Pang Bay or something like that. But the rich and famous and the sort of movie stars and the sports stars really like to be treated normally. In fact, I can tell you, because I've told him that I'll tell this, but that's why I said Roger Federer. He stayed here for, I think, 3 weeks, and his then fiance, who's now his wife, said to me, just make sure that the other guests don't rush up and ask for his, signature, his autograph. And, 2 or 3 days went past, and she came back and said, thank you. I mean, nobody's been asking. It's fantastic. And I said, yeah, that's true, I guess. And none of the staff have asked for a selfie. And no. 2 days later, she came back and said, is there anyone that would like a selfie or an autograph? Roger would be more than happy to do that. They were surprised because our guests actually didn't rush up to him in the restaurant. Some might tip their hat or, say, well done, but nobody bothers them in small places like this. So we're very fortunate we have that environment.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Anthony, I'm going to let you go, but it's been wonderful.
Thanks, buddy.
As always, there are a million other things I would have loved to have touched on, but we'll do that over a frosty margarita when you and I next meet in real life, 2 meters apart. But
there you are. And I'm not wearing, I should, but I won't wear a mask in those days, and I look forward to seeing you. You're an hour and a half away from Phuket. It's just a bus ride. I think international travel will probably return around August or September here, and we expect you on the first flight, my friend.
I regret that I didn't get over there and just shelter in place.
I know.
That's what I should have done. That's what I should have done.
We could have kept you here. You could have locked down with us.
Right around. Loved it. All right. Thank you again, and
my pleasure.
Thank everyone who joined us today or who's watching this on recording. Join me again later in the week for another Banter with Barker. Thank you very much, Anthony. I'll see you very, very soon.
Cheers, buddy boy. Have a good afternoon.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.